Recently, I've been reflecting on the value we can gain from forming a more positive relationship with failure. Failure is often viewed primarily as a negative experience, when it also can provide us with an opportunity to learn and grow. Today I'm out here at another Norfolk National Trust property. I've got another introspective topic and some relaxing acoustic music, but at this stage I'm just going to lean into it because we're discussing how we can turn failure from a miserable experience into a tool for personal growth. When it comes to understanding why failure is such a valuable tool for learning, my first attempt at filming this YouTube video is actually a great example of how this works. On my first effort filming this piece of content, I spent 3 hours next to a busy A road and a glorified swamp, only to walk away with about a third of the video complete and actually nothing of any real consequence. The thing about anything is that you have to keep repeating. Is that dog poo? I've got some great shaky telephoto footage of birds flying around, and that's good. Now, in the aftermath of that, I could spend my time feeling angry and frustrated at my own incompetence, but I'm not going to do that. And instead, I'm going to focus on what I can learn from that experience. And I'll keep it brief, but essentially that is that I need more time, I need to learn my script better, I need to improve upon my script, and also that I should probably choose a more uplifting location for a self-improvement video. And I think it's really important to adopt this growth mindset, this positivity in the aftermath of something not going as planned in order to be able to extract the most value from it. Because if we only focus on our frustrations, we're rapidly going to burn out and lose motivation for following our dreams. There's a great quote from Michael Jordan about his successes and failures in basketball, which I think helped to summarize this really well. And it goes like this. In my career, I've missed over 9,000 shots. I've lost over 300 games. 26 times I've been trusted to take the game-winning shot, and I've missed. I've failed over and over and over again in my life, and that is why I succeed. The light's now getting quite harsh. I've lost that lovely soft morning light, and it's getting a little bit busier, but let's go into the woods and find the next location. But if failure is this immense untapped well of knowledge and wisdom, why is it that so many of us are plagued by fear of failure, holding us back from achieving our goals? I think the reason that I dislike failure so much is that it feels bad. It can be embarrassing, and much like falling off this log would be, I'd worry about how it might negatively affect the perception of those around me. So I think when the potential consequences of failure are high, it can feel much easier to remain in our comfort zones, keep doing what we're already good at, and avoid exposing ourselves to situations where our success is uncertain. But if exposing ourselves to failure is an inevitable part of achieving success, how do we overcome this fear of failure to allow us to move forward and achieve our goals? Well, when I'm weighing up any big decision, I like to write things down as I find it helps me just to gain more clarity on the situation. And next, I want to share with you the questions that I ask myself to help me gain more perspective. The first thing I like to ask myself is, why do I want to achieve this goal? And although that may sound like an obvious question, I think it's quite important to closely examine your why, as this actually forms the underpinning motivation for you to take some action in the first place. Hold your why close to your chest, because when times get difficult and things are becoming tough, this can provide you with the strength that you need to keep going even in the face of adversity. The next question I like to ask myself is, what is the cost of inaction? And although we may have the price of failure at the forefront of our mind, I think it's equally as important to ask ourselves how we're going to feel if we decide not to follow through with this ambition. And I think that can actually be quite detrimental, and certainly in a lot of cases can be worse than the cost of failure. Particularly if you have a strong why and a strong motivation, it's going to have a detrimental effect on your long-term happiness and sense of well-being if you decide not to go forward with something that you're really passionate about. Initially, I was quite stoked when I found this natural seat in the forest, but by take 6, I am getting quite wet. Never mind, we're going to continue on. What I want to discuss now is, what is the realistic worst case scenario if you're not successful? And I think one of the things you can realise by actually giving this some structured thought is that when you put pen to paper, what you're concerned about is potentially neither as consequential nor as likely as you might initially think. And I think this can be really reassuring to go through this process. And I also find myself thinking that I'm going to learn a huge amount in the process of undertaking a new challenge, even if it's not ultimately what I proceed to do in the long term. We're always going to come away with some kind of benefit, which is going to better inform our success next time. The next question of value that I like to ask myself is what obstacles are standing in my way and how can I overcome them? And instead of allowing these obstacles to be reasons not to go ahead, I like to ask questions of the obstacles in order to find the pathway forwards. If I'm starting a new freelance business and I don't know where to find clients, could I volunteer my time for free in order to build my portfolio? Are there courses that I can take in order to reduce the likelihood of mistakes and reduce my learning curve? Whatever it is, I think it's important to look ahead, anticipate potential problems and come up with solutions ahead of time, which makes the task ahead feel much more manageable. If I'm honest with you, after 6 hours on the go, this is just as much about finding somewhere to sit down as it is a compositional technique. And I can't actually remember whether this is the tree which is in the middle of the frame. But either way, I want to talk about that despite having the best will in the world, despite the best planning moving forwards, things can and do still go wrong. And in these circumstances, I think it's important to have a toolkit of techniques to be able to rely on, to be able to make sense of your experience and gain the most value from it when things don't quite go to plan. So I'm going to chill out here for a while and then we're going to get out of the woods and I'll talk through this toolkit of strategies. So my first piece of advice when things don't go to plan is to accept it. Although it might sound obvious, I think it's important just to take a moment to really wish that that hadn't happened, but also accept that making mistakes is a normal part of the human experience. We can't change it and it's an essential aspect of the journey to finding success. Next is consider context, and I think it's really important to be kind of skeptical of your internal monologue if you're feeling tired, hungry or otherwise frustrated by other events that have gone on your day. This can cause a real snowball effect and can make the situation seem much worse than it actually is. And I find that if I come back to things the next day when I'm well rested, it's not nearly as bad as I first thought. A friend of mine watched my last video and said that he liked it, but I should probably stop doing that thing where I walk towards the camera because it looks like I'm presenting an episode of Springwatch. And, well, I can't disagree. I'm just going to lean into it. So my next piece of advice is don't blame yourself. And I think it can be very easy to think about what could have been, what we should have done, how do we make that mistake and start to blame ourselves. But I think in circumstances where what we've done is neither intentional nor reckless, it's much better to speak to ourselves with kindness and compassion in the same way that we would speak to a friend if they had made that mistake. I don't see any reason why we shouldn't do the same to ourselves, and ultimately it's going to allow us to recover from making that mistake and bounce back much quicker. The next thing I like to consider is the long-term context, and surely I could have come up with a better title, but nonetheless we're going with it because I think the point stands that if what we're irate about is unlikely to be relevant in a few days, a couple of weeks, a month, is it really worth becoming angry and frustrated about it? I think this helps us just to put this into the context of our life more broadly and reminds us to use our valuable time thinking about how we're going to take action to rectify the situation instead of wallowing in the mistake that we've made. So I hope you've enjoyed this video, gained some value from it, and can take away some actionable tips to use when you're next encountering a challenge and want to overcome fear of failure. I'm Chris Chadwick. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.